Hello, everybody, and welcome. We're still working on getting music for the intro, but until then, hi. Oh, I forgot my glasses. Hi, I'm Gentleman Toast, and this is Broverwatch with only one bro. Because Brendan is busy this week, so I'll be here chatting up, talking about Overwatch, what's been going on in the past week. And basically what that means is not a whole lot. So, yeah, it'll be fairly short, but it should be fun. And feel free to participate in any discussion if you have questions you want to ask or just things you want to bring up. Feel free to address them, and I'd love to talk about them. So, moving forward with the format, I like to pull a couple funny forum posts from each week. And these are a couple that I stumbled across. The first one was from probably about a week ago. No, less than a week ago. But I laughed. I found it so funny that someone would suggest that straight up Bastion should not be allowed to get play of the game. Um, Honestly, he's kind of got a point. Just because I feel like the diversity of Bastion plays of the game is so much smaller than any other character. Even something like I don't. I was gonna say Soldier 76, but his ult isn't even play of the game all that much. But like McCree, for example, usually his play of the game is just him ulting and then maybe getting a secondary kill. But Bastion plays of the game are either him ulting or him just holding down left click. So he's got a point, but at the same time, just flat out suggesting that kind of blatant discrimination against the character was funny to me. And then the second one was from today, which I picked up. And the way it's phrased, again, usually when people complain, especially on the forums, they have some legitimacy to their comments, but they're very rarely phrased in a very constructive way. So the second one's called Force Devs to Play Symmetra for a Week. And then he goes on to talk about the way Symmetra plays and exactly what her play style is and whether you disagree or agree with what he's saying. And we had a conversation about Symmetra last week. But regardless of your stance on her, it was it was funny that he wants the devs to play Symmetra exclusively because he feels that strongly about why she should be changed. So, anyway, hi. We're going to be talking about launch for a little while. Not lunch, launch. There's a difference. Did a lot of not eating lunch because of launch, but yeah. Oh, and we'll move on to this is a submitted montage that I thought was pretty cool, and I'll show that in the background for a little bit. As I said, Brendan's not here this week, so I'll be talking your ears off by myself, which is absolutely cool with me because I do that all the time anyway. So yeah, launch went actually surprisingly smoothly for a Blizzard game. Honestly, I can't remember, and most people commented on this. I can't remember the last Blizzard launch that went as well as the Overwatch launch went. So, props to Blizzard for that. Obviously, we have the notorious Diablo 3 launch, which is a number of years in the past at this point. Warlords of Draenor was not particularly good, I must say. The Hearthstone launch was iffy, and usually most Hearthstone expansions are a little bit plagued with server issues, but only to the extent that Overwatch was. So I think that's a real improvement on Blizzard's kind of historic launches. But yeah, in general, everything was quite well. Servers were down for about 20 minutes, I'd say. Maybe less than that. Probably closer to 15 or 17 minutes. And in the meantime, everyone was just trying to log in. But a lot of people, it demonstrated that a lot of people were really excited to play the game. So that was exciting. And it's been surprising to me how well the momentum has been maintained over the past week or so. Overwatch is still pushing high numbers on Twitch, and it's doing well, which gets us into the conversation that I'll be having later, about watchability. And we've talked about this before, I've hinted at it, but I really want to get into an in-depth conversation about what it means for Overwatch to be a watchable game, ironically, and how that can be affected by both the streamer and the community, the game developers in general. So, just talking generally about the game, I've had a lot of fun. Obviously, I've put a number of hours into this week. I think I'm just shy of 37, which is not the top tier when it comes to leveling exactly. I've run into a number of people who are probably in their mid to upper 50s at this point. Yesterday I think the highest I saw was a 46 yesterday. And so if they've continued to play at a fairly consistent rate, they're probably mid 50s, which is impressive. That's not a whole lot of downtime, if we're being honest. But leveling doesn't necessarily represent all that much outside of actual time played. I think at 37, I'm probably in the top 25%. But what does that mean anyway? Yeah, I've put a decent amount of time into it. Still, messing with the green screen, I guess. Gotta sit up straight. Still coming around on some opinions. There was a discussion post today on Reddit, and a lot of people were talking about several characters that they think need changes. And we discussed this somewhat last week, but we're getting enough, the community as a whole is getting enough gameplay under its belt at this point that it's becoming appropriate for us to start having discussions about things that may or may not be working as intended, or maybe working as intended, but not coming about as helpfully as we would have hoped. So the first thing that comes up in pretty much every thread is McCree. People talk a lot about McCree, and disclosed bias straight off the bat, I'm a McCree player. I don't play him exclusively, but I love playing McCree. And I would not advocate for any change to his kit, especially after the recent Fan the Hammer nerf, which I think was fair. I went into game after the nerf landed, or I think this was I think the nerf was between the closed beta stress test weekend and the open beta. So I remember going back into the open beta and feeling how he was different with the Fan the Hammer nerf. And I was like, it's disappointing because it makes him less dangerous, but I think it's appropriate. I think it was fair. But at this point, people are asking for... there are always people that ask for, complete kit overhauls, which just isn't going to happen. And it shouldn't happen. It should not happen. People are asking for changes to his flashbang, and while I think the radius could be... okay, to be fair, if you were going to decrease the radius on his flashbang, you would have to increase the range, because otherwise it's almost useless. And other people are asking for a reduction to his Fan the Hammer damage, which I think is absolutely asinine, because if you reduce his Fan the Hammer damage, which is already... it's enough to kill a 200 and 250 character health character if you hit, I think, a majority of your shots. I don't have the exact numbers on that. I'd have to look that up. But it does enough damage to kill pretty much any squishy character. And if you roll fan, as a lot of people do when trying to take out tanks, it can effectively take out any tank other than Roadhog, and can get Roadhog if you get some headshots in there. So, it does a lot of damage, and it does good damage, but I think we need that burst damage. Playing, I find myself picking McCree usually when I need to deal with characters like Tracer. He's really one of very few effective Tracer counters, and even then, it's not super effective because Tracer is just so mobile. But we need that stun, and people are like, it's annoying to play against, and it's uninteractive, and I agree. But it needs to be that way, because otherwise we don't have ways to deal with characters like Tracer, especially, unless you're going to hook her as Roadhog. May's not that effective. Other than that, you can get a good Reaper shot on her and one-shot her, but a good Tracer is far too mobile to kill in pretty much any other manner other than a McCree flashbang. He's good at taking out Maze, which usually give most other characters a reasonable amount of difficulty. But the point is, he can 1v1 pretty much any other character with fairly good success. It depends on their range, obviously, and exactly how he's set up. But in general, I think he's in a good spot. Most people, I think they're struggling. We went over this last week. Most people struggle with McCree is that he's designed to ruthlessly kill any solo character. But you get him in a group. You make him fight... two people he might be able to kill, depending on how his flashbang lands. I know yesterday I actually landed a double kill with one flashbang and one Fan the Hammer, so that was cool. But that's more of an exception than an actual regularity. You get him fighting a group of 2 or 3 people, and he's extremely vulnerable. So he's designed to deal with flankers. People talk about his ultimate, and I heard something interesting today, which I had never considered, and I think it was mentioned by someone referring to something said by a professional player, where for 50% of his ult, you can essentially clear out an objective, which I think is an interesting concept. I don't necessarily know if it holds water. That's something I'd have to consider a little bit more, because usually if even a well-placed ult puts McCree, makes him vulnerable, which is the point. He's supposed to be slow and open and vulnerable to things like Roadhog. So I don't think that's necessarily entirely true. That he goes unrivaled. Yes, it's dangerous and you don't necessarily want to be out in the open, but I also think that most objectives probably have a decent amount of area to hide around them. So yeah, talks about McCree nerfs. There was talks about D.Va changes. People want a little tighter spread on her guns. I don't know about that, because she already shreds tanks. If she's able to headshot them more effectively, she's going to be a really effective anti-tank tank, which is okay. But I already think she serves that function already. I really just think she needs a little bit more survivability, and that's it. And the way you might be able to introduce that is just changing window timing a little bit. When D.Va starts entering her mech, when D.Va starts entering her mech, the mech itself is vulnerable to damage, but she can't attack, she can't move. Which is why sometimes when you're playing D.Va and you're in really dangerous situations, you'll end up in your mech and you'll immediately die. Gotta stop hitting my mic. You'll immediately die and then be kicked out of your mech again, and that's because they can damage you before you can even see your health bar. I think timing that window a little bit better, making her invulnerable, because she can't move, she can't act, she's locked into this animation. I think making at least a part of that animation an invulnerability window would help with some of the issues that D.Vas are currently facing. Widowmaker mobility. I don't find Widowmaker to be too mobile. I've never had an issue with her. Well, I shouldn't say I've never had an issue with her getting away. Her grappling hook seems to function weirdly, but that's because I rarely use her and I don't necessarily understand how it works. No, I don't think her mobility is a problem. I did hear something today, and it made me think. People have been discussing Zenyatta a whole lot recently. They still think he's in a weird spot, and I agree, simply because he's so slow. And his hitbox is unusually large for a character with as little health as he has. Now, he does have a lot of shield, which is nice, because essentially as long as you don't die as Zenyatta, you're going to be restored to full health or almost full health just by nature of his shield, because shields regenerate over time. But it does... he's just incredibly slow and incredibly vulnerable to Widowmakers. And people have been calling for a buff to his health. And someone mentioned swapping Widowmaker's health and Zenyatta's health. Widowmaker has 200 health, Zenyatta has 150. Excuse me. And I think I agree with that. Not because I hate Widowmakers. I hate them a little bit, although I've started playing her more because I suck at Hanzo. Not because I hate Widowmakers, but because it just feels weird for Zenyatta to have less health than Widowmaker. And I do think that Widowmaker could use a slight nerf to her health just to make it easier to kill her without actually having to get up in her flank. Currently, she's really difficult to counter-snipe, even with characters that should, in theory, be capable of doing so. Like, McCree, depending on what range you're at. I know yesterday I got... phrasing this differently. This is why I think Widowmaker needs a nerf, is because her hitbox is so small. She's the thinnest character in the game by far. maybe rivaled by Tracer. I think Tracer might actually be smaller. Widowmaker's slightly taller. And she stands still, but it makes her incredibly hard to hit at a distance with anyone that's not a sniper, or unless you get really good at lobbing grenades and things like that. So I think because her hitbox is so small, she deserves 150 health. She deserves to be the squishiest character, and not Zenyatta. So I would advocate for that health swap. I don't know of any other changes. I still think that I would like her to have a black scope. If we're not going to reduce her charge-up damage, although I've found less issues with it since the beta, I've run into less Widowmaker problems because I think people are getting better at dealing with them. But if we're not going to reduce the charge-up time, maybe just making it so it's a typical sniper scope. That would be nice. Trying to think of other characters. Oh, big one who I still have issues with, and I find him to be probably the most frustrating character to play against. Junkrat. And I want to highlight two things when it comes to Junkrat. Firstly, his ultimate. I don't actually have a problem with Riptire as an ultimate because it's vulnerable to damage. Any character can take it out. I killed his Tire as a mercy before it got to me. So any character is capable of killing his Tire effectively. So it's a good balance between squishy but not too squishy. The problem I have with it is I think it charges too fast. And this might be through the nature of exactly how Junkrat gains ultimate charge compared to other characters. You have a standard character like Soldier 76, and he just shoots people. And that's how he gets ultimate charge. Like, he shoots people with his gun, and I think he might get ultimate charge for healing people as well. And that's how he gets ultimate charge. It's straightforward. But Junkrat has a lot of kind of weird proximity things which have the ability to gain him ultimate charge. He has traps, which we'll get into. He has his concussion sort of grenade or whatever it's called. It's the airbag thing. And he does AoE damage, so he's designed to kind of just lob grenades and get hits. And so he's building ultimate charge fairly consistently as compared to maybe other characters. And that's on top of the default ultimate charge. So I bring this up only because it only came to my attention when we were playing Attack on Volskaya, and the map is really irrelevant, but there was a Junkrat on the other team, and he had his ultimate by 44 seconds into the game, which just seemed really quick. And I feel like other people might disagree, but I'm playing games with Junkrat, and it seems like every minute and a half, he has an ultimate up, and you hear another fire in the hole. And God forbid you're facing two Junkrats, and you hear that every minute at least. And it's just, it's so disruptive. And I get it's designed to be disruptive, but its power compared to, or allied with the rate at which it charges seems a bit too disruptive. And it's not a problem. It's just very, very frustrating and annoying to play against. And if that's working as intended, then sure, fantastic. If not, I would just like a little bit slower charge time on that ultimate. That's all I really care about. The other thing that came to my mind, and I voiced my concerns last week, and I don't really have anything to add to that, but I have an interesting comparison. There was a thread on Reddit, which is where I get most of my information, if you couldn't tell, or my discussion. And where is it? Oh, they were saying never add an invisibility character, and my opinion on that is pro anti-invisibility. So no invisibility character. I think it would be extremely frustrating to play against. Or if it was implemented, I have to be very, very careful to not be really, really frustrating. But that aside, it made me realize kind of the parallels between an invisibility character's frustrations and Junkrat's traps, because people were like, I don't really want to have to shoot at corners blindly, or I don't want to have to shoot at health pickups to deal with an invisibility character. And the corners thing really resonated with me because a lot of times you round corners and there's a Junkrat trap there. And I hate the idea that I need to compulsively check the ground instead of looking where enemies are in order to check for Junkrat traps. So I still think they could use some tuning. Also, I've seen multiple occasions when the Junkrat trap will reach out and grab you. So maybe part of the frustration would be just tuning the activation hitbox for Junkrat traps to be much smaller than it currently is. Also, Reaper's Wraith form doesn't break the trap. I'd like to see at least a couple abilities that can break Junkrat traps. I'd like to see like Diva's boost to be able to break it. I'd like to see Winston's ultimate to be able to break it. Reaper Wraith form. Is that everything? Zenyatta Transcendence, probably. Someone posted a funny comic, and it shows Zenyatta getting trapped in a Junkrat trap, even though he levitates. Which, while I don't think he should be immune to Junkrat traps, I find it amusing. Other ultimates. I can't really think of any others. Nothing else really affects movement speed. You might give it to Genji, but that seems a bit generous. Yeah, things like that. Is Junkrat the only one with a proxy ult charges? If you mean like AoE damage, whether or not you're referring to his AoE damage or his traps and his concussion grenades, Symmetra also gains ult charge from her remote turrets, as does Torbjorn. And actually, I'm calling it now. I think Torbjorn's actually a sleeper, like, overpowered character at some point, because Torbjorn suffers from the exact opposite problem that D.Va suffers from, and I'll discuss that after I finish up Junkrat. But no, it's mainly because Junkrat can just get hit markers really quickly, and his ultimate charge is so low that he charges his ultimate really quickly. And maybe that's to compensate for the fact that it can be destroyed, but I don't necessarily know if we should be balancing ult charge times around the ability to counter it. I agree balancing it over or around the potential damage. Like, McCree's ult charge is pretty long. It's probably up there with some of the longest charge times. And that's because it can easily 1v6 an entire team. It can team kill the entire enemy team if they're not paying attention. So I agree with that. But just because Junkrat's tire can be destroyed, I don't think justifies it being so low charge time. But no. So an interesting thing about Torbjorn, and really the way you should play Torbjorn if you're not aware, set up your turret somewhere, level it up to level 2, and then just go and use your gun and do damage, because it does a lot of good damage. And it's nice to have Torbjorn as a kind of body around a point to try and distract the enemy, if nothing else, and pick up a couple kills. But when Torbjorn is dead, and I can't say for certain whether or not you gain ultimate charge when you're dead. I don't think you do, because you get that default like charge per second. It's like 1% every 2 seconds, I want to say. You get that default charge time. And Torbjorn, so no one gets it when they're dead, but when Torbjorn's dead, his turret can still do damage and it can still fight. And that gains him ultimate charge. So even when he's dead, Torbjorn gains ult charge. I don't think that's a problem, but I definitely think it's extremely powerful, because by the nature of the way you play, so if like you play Torbjorn like I play Torbjorn, you set up your turret and you go and fight, and maybe you pick up a couple kills. You're at like 40% turret, or let's be generous and say you're at 60% turret. And then you die. You watch your kill cam and you're running back, and your turret's still in combat. It's still alive, and you might be up to 80% ult charge because your turret was doing damage. And I don't think that's inappropriate. I just think it demonstrates particularly the issues with D.Va, which is when D.Va's out of her mech suit, she doesn't gain mech ultimate charge, which is powerful yet inconsistent. I would agree it comes down to player skill and your ability to kind of throw an ultimate without the enemy team expecting it or being able to adapt to it. It's designed to clear out in an area. But I don't think her ultimate is good enough to justify how difficult it is to get it off. Because one of D.Va's main advantages is she can spend time out of her suit and not necessarily die, so she can still be a body on point. She can still do a reasonable amount of damage. And the more damage she does, the quicker she gets a mech. But with how squishy she is, and by nature of that, how much time she's spending outside of her mech in a typical match, her not gaining ultimate charge during that time period is really damaging her ability to contribute to the team. So I think that's part of D.Va's issues. I'm trying to go through the list of characters, see if there's anything else I have to say. For the most part, I'm pretty content with the way things have gone over. Everything's balanced out pretty well. Most people are... I'm seeing a lot less Bastion, which is great. We still whip him out on occasion. I thought it was funny yesterday. We went up against a team. It was we were defending on Temple of Anubis, and they went double Winston. So they by surprising us with double Winston, which is something I have very rarely seen, maybe 3 games. They steamrolled our first objective, and I was playing with Brennan. And I was like, okay, Brennan, there was already a Bastion on our team. I'm like, Brennan, just go a second Bastion. Bastion is designed to counter Winston, amongst other tanks. So he went a second Bastion, and we held that point for whatever 7 or 8 minutes that it was. And then after the game, of course, one of the 2 Winstons was like, can't win, ? Better go double Bastion. And I find people's rage in this game amusing because usually it's founded upon a fundamental misunderstanding of the way the game mechanics work. So yeah, it's nice that we're seeing less Bastion. It's because people are learning how to effectively counter him and how to deal with him. But I'm glad he's still there. I think he serves a really good purpose in certain clutch situations, so I haven't had any complaints about him. Going through the list, Symmetra is still a weird character that has a lot of discussion surrounding her. Some people really like to play Symmetra, and some people are really good at playing Symmetra, and some people really dislike her, both from a play standpoint and from an opponent standpoint. I find the damage on her turrets to be... I was going to say inconsistent. My gameplay with Symmetra is inconsistent. I very rarely get turret kills. I can get a lot of weapon kills, but I very rarely get turret kills with her. And that seems like I guess my placement is poor, or I'm just putting up them against the wrong team. I play Symmetra based on the objective that we're trying to hold, not based on the enemy team, which I think is fine. I don't have issues with that. A lot of people would say that that's part of her issue, but I don't necessarily agree with that because she's an objective-based support character, although I still advocate for her changing to defense. The turrets are too easily killed by tanks and they're too difficult to kill by squishy characters, especially if you end up being hurt by 2 or 3 of them at one time. There's almost no time to react to them. So I find that frustrating. Probably appropriate, but a bit odd. But I don't know what people want to see when it comes to changing her kit. I think the teleporter is absolutely something we need. Like, that is 100% necessary for some objectives to be even feasible to hold. Her shields are still in a weird spot. I agree that something should probably be done to make them more interesting. And someone suggested changing shields so that shields absorb all the damage done in one hit. So if you have 25, if you have shields, Symmetra shields, that are only 25, but you get hit by a Widowmaker who does, let's say they headshot you, just for shits and giggles, and it does, 300 damage, I guess, for a Widow headshot. At full power, your shield would be the only thing that's broken. You take no health damage. I think that's interesting. I don't necessarily know if it's feasible to implement, at least in the short term, because it would require quite a bit of internal and external testing. But I think that's definitely a way of making Symmetra, giving a decent buff to Symmetra and Zenyatta. And making shields... maybe it would make shields too powerful. And Zarya. But I don't necessarily think any of those characters are in a position where they're going to be potentially dangerous if we saw a change like that. So, although Zarya could be extremely annoying to try and kill if you were to program shields that way. So, like I said, we'd have to be careful and we'd have to do a lot of testing to see if that was something that would be viable. Other than that, I'm seeing a lot more Zarya play, which is pretty good. She's good. I still need to play her more to get down exactly how to play her. especially when it comes to shielding enemies, or I'm sorry, allies, rather than yourself, because it's easy to kind of press the panic button when you're under fire, but it's much more difficult to actually shield allies who are under fire. So she's definitely a powerful character, though, and extremely frustrating because she can be kind of a one-woman army at times and just take out the entire team with her ult and a few well-placed pulse grenades. So she's another character with AoE damage, and because a lot of people tend to rely on her right click as opposed to her left click, she builds ultimate charge that way, but she has a very long ult charge time as well. So it's not really an issue. I'm going through the list here. I'm trying to see everyone. I talked about Torbjorn. He's a really strong character. I think his only disadvantage is the fact that he has to set up to kind of be at maximum potential. And even then, it's not too difficult to deal with. So really, really strong. Who else is on defense? Widowmaker, Hanzo. I'm bad at Hanzo. I'm not saying that, like, there's anything wrong with him. I'm really bad at him. Who else? I know I'm missing someone. Oh, Bastion. Less problems with him. I don't know if people are still calling for changes to him. I don't know if the Bastion uproar has kind of settled a little bit at this point. Most people probably realize that Genji is a pretty good counter to him. Roadhog can counter him fairly effectively. Sometimes I'm a bit frustrated by how much health he has, particularly in his tank form when he ults, because he gets extra armor during that. But I don't have any serious complaints about him at this point. I did. I was playing Pharah, and I was trying to kill a Bastion, and it frustrated me the fact that he can look straight up in the air. Just because, as it stands, there really is no way of escaping him. Like, you could not have any angle on him other than, I guess, no, he can look down. So maybe limiting his vertical view would make him a little bit easier to deal with, just because then you could play Pharah, you could go right above him, and you could rain rockets down on him, which would at very least force him to transform out of turret mode. But, yeah, that's all I can think. And then Mei. I've played a lot of Mei recently. She's growing on me. She's absolutely one of the most frustrating characters to play against, but I don't get extremely angry when fighting her. I just realize, I'm like, oh, there's nothing I can do. Similar to McCree. Her extreme viability comes with her ability to heal, distance herself, zone herself from other characters, as well as essentially land an instant kill on any small characters. Mukia, how you doing today? So Mei's really, really powerful, but not a character I think that I have issues with. I did think about this a little bit, and I may have come around. Funny. I may have come around on my opinion of this. I think if we decreased the time to freeze by increased the time to freeze just a smidge, and then increased her damage, her base damage of her left click, proportional to the reduced time or the increased time to freeze. I think that would be decent, because it would give characters a little bit more time to respond to her. But it would also make her left click less of a freezing machine and something that can actually do a little bit of damage if that's what you're looking for. Because as I play Mei, her freeze is only useful for freezing enemies, and that's fine, but it seems like it should have at least a little bit more damage on it, because I'm relying almost exclusively on icicles. So if we can de-emphasize the reliance on icicles in favor of a little bit more fair and yet viable left click, I think that would be a good solution for everyone. I think everyone would be happy with that. And then moving on to damage, I'm still frustrated by Pharah. I really don't know what to do against her other than go Widowmaker, but half the time that's not even a viable option. She takes out Torbjorn turrets, she takes out Bastions pretty well. She's hard as hell to hit. Yeah, I don't know. But as far as I can tell, that's just a skill thing. That's not actually a balance problem. extremely frustrating, though, especially with McCree's fall-off damage. What else we got? We got Soldier 76, who's just all-around solid. Had no problems with him. Not seeing him a whole lot. Every once in a while, I'll pick him usually on last objectives when I need to get back there pretty quickly, and we just need a solid push. But very rarely do I see a Soldier 76 first picked at the beginning of the game, which is interesting. Reaper is in a good spot. Yeah, he can absolutely face roll over enemies if they're not prepared to deal with him. But Reaper is one of a handful of characters that McCree exists because of. Because if it weren't for McCree, Reaper would be able to 1v1 most other characters, I think. Genji's a bit of an exception because Genji is kind of like the 1v1 counter, if you want, depending on how well he's played. But McCree's a really good counter to Reaper, and I think that's appropriate because sometimes a Reaper will just walk around, and you need that really quick stun and kill him before he can get his Wraith form off, or else he's going to get the fuck out of there, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. McCree, we discussed earlier. I love me some McCree. I just bought me my my Riverboat McCree skin, which is the one I wanted after a legendary coin chest. Thank you for that, Blizzard. And people are frustrated by him, rightfully so. Just don't 1v1 him. That's all I can say. And sometimes that's not possible. If you're a flanking character, you're going to run into McCree's and you're going to get killed. Unless he's really bad or his fan just doesn't hit in a favorable pattern or something like that. But that's just how things are going to go. And he's a necessary evil, I would say, and he's not even that evil. Just stick with the team. If they're running 2 McCrees for some god-unforsaken reason, then just stick with your team. Stop playing flankers for one. Which is sometimes easier said than done. If you have to get rid of a Widow, then make sure you take care of that and all that kind of stuff. But just stick with the team, and that's the easiest counter to McCree. Genji is still hard as hell to play. Getting better at him. I'm seeing less of him as Bastion is seen, as we see less Bastion. A personal plea to all of the Genjis out there: if we're playing against a Bastion and you're playing McCree, please make Genji. Please make killing the Bastion your #1 priority so the rest of the team can actually function effectively. I can't tell you how many times I'm on a team with a Genji who's failing to kill, or just not even trying to kill, the Bastion. It's really frustrating because I'm not going to switch to Genji, and that's the nature of the discussion. Who else we got? We talked about Pharah, talked about McCree. Tracer. Really good Tracers are really annoying, and I find... rightfully so, because this is how Tracer is designed. She is the most difficult character to kill and difficult to deal with because she's all over the place. She can rewind time. Short of a Roadhog hook, a Junkrat trap, or a McCree flashbang, good luck killing her. Or sniping her. But that's usually if she's running around distracted. So yeah, really effective. Hard to play correctly, though. I've only run into a handful of really... exceptionally good Tracers at this point. And people will get better at her as we go along. But I'll be honest, the exceptional Tracers that I ran into were the kind of people that only play that character. I've seen Genjis like that. I've seen Tracers like that. I'm trying to think if... I ran into a Roadhog who's like, I only play Roadhog. Or he said, I have only played Roadhog. He didn't say that out of principle he only plays them, but that he only has up to that point. So usually the characters that I get absolutely destroyed by are by people who I will play 3 or 4 or 5 rounds with, and they'll only play that character. Which seems appropriate, because if you had spent some 20, 30 plus hours on one character, you're probably going to be pretty good at them. But once we get to the point where people are actually knowledgeable about effectively countering those characters, they're going to be forced to learn other characters, and then it kind of balances itself out. And I think that's everyone. I might be missing a damage. I don't think so. Okay, well, we reviewed pretty much everyone, other than supports. Mercy's fine. Lucio's still boring as hell to play. Yeah. that's about all I have to say about launch. Looking forward to how things progress. We were going to talk about... that is the wrong option. Hold on. Talk about... I think that's how you spell that. Yeah, watching Overwatch. So let's talk about that for a little bit. I want to get into this discussion. We're going to have a real talk. So, and this comes from a very loving place. Overwatch is not particularly fun to watch. I put on Overwatch streams because I like the people that are streaming Overwatch, and I like hearing their conversations when they're playing with other people, kind of seeing some of the good plays. But honestly, I have difficulties sitting down and staring at a screen and watching someone play Overwatch. It's just not something that is engaging to the viewer for a number of reasons, and some of them you can't help. It's a first-person shooter, it's action-based, it appeals to a certain demographic, and at least at this point in time, if I can play Overwatch, I'm going to be playing Overwatch more than I'm going to be watching it. Just simple as that. Hearthstone's really effective on Twitch and really popular on Twitch because people can watch Hearthstone both as kind of just a casual thing to put on. I might put it on when I'm, browsing Reddit or something because I can look at things and people will talk through their moves. Also, they can watch Hearthstone and play Hearthstone at the same time and get equal experience from both because you have to wait on turns, and while you're waiting on your opponent, who might take a little while, you can watch the stream, and you're still getting the stream experience for that. When I put on Overwatch while I'm playing Overwatch, I'm only getting the audio, very short visual clips from it, that kind of stuff. So it's not a particularly good watching endeavor on the part of the viewer. Partly because just of the nature of the game, and I think we'll get to a point where people enjoy watching Overwatch as much as someone can enjoy watching Overwatch, but that will only be so much as compared to other things. I expect to see a drop-off in Twitch viewership in a week or so. It'll still be popular, but that's mainly being ballooned by a few huge streamers who have a large viewership regardless. And I wouldn't be surprised even if their numbers while they're streaming Overwatch are lower than what they would have been otherwise. And there's two facets to watchability, I think. There's competitive watchability and there's streamer watchability. Competitive is something we're only beginning to explore. The competitive scene hasn't really gotten off the ground yet, but we're looking towards it, and I don't know. I think they're currently using the current spectator mode, which is about all they can do. And that's fine. I didn't find the spectator mode to be particularly bad. Actually, I found it to be pretty good. When you switch between characters, there's this really nice and smooth kind of transfer between where they are on the map. It looked nice, but it's not quite there yet. Obviously, if we're going to be looking at competitive, we need to be able to see both teams at the same time. That's that's priority number one. Being able to tell enemy health and positions and things like that, that's just a bonus. Excuse me. And the biggest issue I had with the spectator mode is the camera's just a little too close. It's a nice kind of cinematic view, but we need to, for spectator mode, at least for a competitive spectator mode, we need to pull the camera out and add either a free-flowing camera or at least several tactical cameras to the map. A free-floating camera would probably be best. It's done in a lot of third-person viewership of games. I'm thinking specifically of games like Smite, or I'm pretty sure they do a free-floating third-person camera in other first-person shooters. So having access to that would be good. Also, strategic position cameras around the map overlooking objectives in certain hallways and things like that would be great. It would feel kind of like switching between security cameras, which might be weird, but I believe that the competitive scene can develop, and Blizzard, in conjunction with the competitive scene, can develop a spectator system that is solid and watchable. So I'm not too worried about that. What I am worried about is viewability of streamers and how streamers can make watching Overwatch a better experience. And some of these are very deliberate, kind of like on-screen things, and some of them are not. One thing I think that definitely should not become a product, if you watch other first-person shooter streams, there's usually a lot of overlay. And I'm by no means successful. But I would say less overlay is better overlay. As minimal overlay as you can possibly manage is probably the best for Overwatch, because there's already so much going on screen. You don't necessarily need to block out portions of it to make it even less comprehensible. So sponsorship and things like that, while important and probably necessary for sponsorship to put on screen, it needs to be regulated by the streamer, not any external regulation. As much as possible to make that viewing good, because and this is more of an address to large streamers, really, because they are the face, whether they like it or not, they are the face of Overwatch. When someone clicks on Overwatch and it's like, what do I want to watch? They're the top 10 streams that we see. They're the top 50. You can't go down like 50 streams without seeing someone over 500 viewers. And those are partnered people, so they're the face of Overwatch, and they need to be vigilant about making this something, not deterring new viewers from watching the game. Other things which are more kind of streamer behavior is being willing to explain exactly what's going on. And being open to people asking questions. People should ask questions if they don't have an idea of what's going on and they want to know. Is it their responsibility to ask questions to understand what's going on in the game? No. But, the game was designed to be played first and watched second, so I don't necessarily think it's a fault of Blizzard's for making it look worse than it feels to play, in a way. They didn't deliberately do it that way, but you understand where I'm coming from. So explaining things to viewers is one big one. I will bring up that certain characters are worse to watch than others, and so I feel like someone who... if, for example, we got to the point where, like League of Legends, where we have certain people playing certain roles primarily, I don't think that's how Overwatch competitive will or should work. But if we get to the point where people are playing certain roles, primarily like a tank, I should imagine the person playing a tank is going to get more viewers than the person playing Assault, just because a valuable Assault player is going to be playing a lot of Genji and a lot of Tracer. And it's very difficult to watch those characters, especially Tracer, because when I'm playing Tracer, half the time I don't know where I am. And that's because I'm a mediocre Tracer at best. A professional player would definitely know better what's going on. But expecting the viewer to track that is a tall order. And so I'd expect watching characters like Reinhardt or Roadhog to be a much more pleasurable experience for people. Similarly to Tracer, no one's really going to want to watch a Widowmaker. But that's why I think that the competitive scene will not devolve into people maining certain roles. I think that most likely everyone's going to be required to have a knowledge of at least 2 characters in each role. But what do I know? But yeah, it's concerning to me. The in all natures, and this is just kind of a personal tangent, it's concerning to me as a small streamer who enjoys streaming Overwatch, the potential growth of the game as a streaming platform. And I'm not looking to pull tons of viewers by doing it, but the fact that most of the views for Overwatch are coming from streamers who most likely are not going to stick around for a long time is the initial concern. We have people like Lyric who are playing Overwatch for now because it's popular and probably because they enjoy it, but they're not going to play Overwatch forever. And so once the viewership drops, I'm concerned to see exactly how it's going to persist over time. There will be some people who continue to play the game like Seagull, who will continue to pull good numbers because they are good at the game, and they're generally great individuals and enjoy engaging with their audience. So they run a good stream. But I'm concerned that Overwatch is going to end up like Heroes of the Storm when it comes to viewership, and I think that would be a real big shame. Because there's a lot of people out there that are passionate about streaming it, myself included, and it's struggling against the system. Really, it is. We're trying our best as small streamers to stream a oversaturated game that is difficult to watch, and at the same time, we're not particularly remarkable players. So maybe by nature of Twitch, these streams are not supposed to succeed. But I think there's a number of people who should succeed, who deserve to succeed, who might not be facilitated in a way that they probably deserve. Will I be playing after the hype? Oh, yeah. No, my schedule for the foreseeable future, for at least hopefully until the end of the year, will be Overwatch 3 days a week, and then Variety my other 2 days of the week. Or 3 if you count Saturday when I play retro games. So yeah, I mean, I'm in on that concern. Hopefully, ranked will help alleviate some of the issues, at least when it comes to the viewability of smaller streamers. If smaller streamers are demonstrating themselves as good within the ranked mode, then they might get more viewability. Really, I want a good viewership community to develop around it, because fundamentally, basic viewership is critical to competitive viewership, because base viewership is people that are actively playing the game, they're actively involved in the game's community, and they're the core audience for competitive gameplay. It's hard to maintain people watching a competitive scene when they don't actively play the game, and conversely, it's much easier to get people to watch a competitive scene when they are actively playing the game and watching the game, involved in the game in various ways of their media consumption. And so that's why I'm concerned, because low viewership translates to low competitive numbers, and I really, really, above all, want to see Overwatch do really well in the competitive scene. And I think it has the potential to. So that's viewership. That's kind of my rant on that, and I'd love to hear opinions about that. But yeah, we'll kind of see how things blow over in the next week or so. We'll keep an eye on the numbers. It continues to pull like anywhere between, when I've checked, anywhere between 80 and 100,000 viewers at any one time. So it's been popular. Whether it remains that way has yet to be seen. So yeah, I think that pretty much caps up discussion for this week. Like I said, they won't be nearly as long as previous weeks. They'll probably run around an hour and a half, not pushing the 2.5 hours like last week. So yeah, I still have fan art and all that good stuff for each week. So let's move on to that. This is by Quirkalicious on DeviantArt, and they have a bunch of different Overwatch characters. I believe they're working on all of the Overwatch characters, and this is absolutely beautiful art. Absolutely fantastic. I decided to feature the guys of Overwatch this week because we kind of featured the women of Overwatch last week. So I pulled a couple of the ones that I like best. And this is poster quality art. I would buy high quality posters of these characters because they look so good. And I really wanted to feature this. I stumbled across the Hanzo one initially, and then I realized they had actually done art that I had seen before on the subreddit. So this was really nice. Secondly, another cosplay. I figure we'll try and feature at least one cosplay each week. And I like this because Soldier 76 is a fairly underrepresented character in the cosplay community. And this was a really high quality cosplay overall. You got the jacket, you got the visor, and you got this massive ass gun, which I think is great at representing the size of Soldier 76's weapon. I don't think it's actually that big in-game. I could be wrong. I think it's slightly smaller, but it's still a huge gun. And then lastly, we have... and that was by... Who was that by? Mall Cosplay on Facebook. And then lastly for this week, we have Overwatch Women in Dresses which I liked. These are actually these are deceptively high quality. Scaling them down causes the lines to become a little bit choppy. But as you can see by scaling them up, it's really, really high quality line work. And I really liked it. They had a bunch of different styles. It's a bit Disney princess, and I enjoyed that. I stumbled across this today. And that's by Atqua on Tumblr, I believe. They might have a DeviantArt as well. So, yeah, that's been me. Thanks for joining me for the solo Broverwatch podcast this week. Hopefully Brennan will be here next week. We'll see. If not, I'll be here by myself just chatting up about experiences. Hopefully some people drop in and chat with us. So thank you guys for viewing today. I'm going to play you out with a remix cover of the Overwatch theme. So hopefully you enjoy that. I will stay classy, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.